Part 2, Anabaptist Jailbreak. In Part 1, 18 Anabaptists had been imprisoned. That was 2 weeks ago. Today, 500 years ago, March the 21st, 1526, all of the men escaped. It seems where the women were held was more secure, and no account is given of what happened to the women. This is how it all went down. How do we know? 2 of the men were too weak and sick and never made it out of town. They were recaptured and put on trial once again. They were told, "Get out of town. If you come back, you're sure to drown. We'll give you your freedom if you tell us the plan." And so this is the story they recounted then. 2 weeks after we had been put in prison on March the 21st, 1526, during the night, we had just been given our water for the Wednesday evening. We were drinking it and eating a little bit of stale bread with it when Karl Brenwald said he thought he saw that one of the shutters would open. The furrier from Schweiz said that he had looked at the shutter before and had wondered about it, but had not given it any more thought. Then someone spoke up and said, "God has given us a way of escape." But Grabel, Blaurock, Mance, and Okenfuss objected, "This is not right. We should not take advantage of it, but rather we should die in the tower as witnesses to the truth." But Heine Hottinger begged us for God's sake to get him out, because he could not survive another day in this terrible place. There was urgent discussion back and forth, and we prayed fervently. We finally all agreed that we did not want to disobey God, and if God would call us differently, we would be willing to die. Mance and the furrier had each brought a flint and steel and some wax candles into the tower to make a light. With the light, others saw some pieces of rope and wire and a pile of rubble and a broken shutter lying on the floor in the corner. With the broken shutter, they heaved at the upper shutter. When they saw that it would give way, Ernst von Glatz, who was most nimble and strong, climbed up the wall in the corner, using the broken shutter and a pile of old books and blocks of wood that we found. And then it was possible for him to climb up through the opening. Then Felix Mance also climbed up, and after him Anthony Rogenacher. They let a rope down and pulled Karl Brenwald up. Others did not want to go. There was hesitation. What if there were guards? But the 4 persuaded us that it was all clear, and they saw a means to escape. The bridge across the moat was up, but the moat was dry. Surely this was a miracle from God, such as when the children of Israel crossed the Jordan. And so they pulled the rest of us up in the same way. Fridley Ab Eiberg of Schweiz was so weak that when he slid down, he collapsed and lost consciousness because of his illness. My heart went out to him, for I too felt weak. When we were all down in the moat, Ernst von Glatz, being the last one, took down the rope and knotted it under his arms and let himself down too. We all made it down. There we were in the middle of the night, in a dry moat outside the tower of the castle, shivering with fear in the cold, damp dark. What should we do now? We had no plan. Okenfuss said he did not know what he would do. Maybe run to Horgerberg to his relatives and find work. Blaurock said he would go across the mountains to Austria. He must keep preaching. Others joked among themselves and said they would go preach to the Red Indians across the sea. One said he would go there, another there. they scattered into the night. By the way, this is the first hint of awareness of going to North America and a realization that it existed. It had been practice of the European explorers to bring back indigenous people from the continent as trophies. And so the Anabaptists must have heard about this. Little did they know that 200 years later, this would come true for their descendants who would land on that continent. Back to the story. Fridley ab Iberg and I were too weak and could not go anywhere. When we were found, we begged for food and were given bread and cheese and something to drink. Then the authorities came. We begged me lords to do their best for us. Fridley could not read or write, and he said if anyone could teach him a better way, he would gladly obey. And so now we stand before you today, begging your mercy. As stated, their sentence was, get out of town. If you come back, you're sure to drown. 9 months later, on January the 5th, 1527, the threat of that third baptism by drowning was carried out, as Felix Manz became the first Anabaptist martyr in Zurich. Conrad Grebel fled Zurich and died of the plague at his older sister's house in Mayenfeld, Switzerland, probably in August or September of 1526. Balthasar Hubmaier, the doctor, the PhD in theology, recanted his recantation and continued his ministry of speaking and writing until he and his wife Elsbeth were executed in Vienna in March 1528. George Blaurock was banished from Zurich and continued to spread Anabaptism to the Tyrol region of Austria. He was executed there in September of 1529. Margaret Hottinger was eventually released, continuing her outspoken preaching in neighboring communities. She was executed along with her father, Jacob Hottinger, in 1530. We do not know the exact fate of all the others. We do know that the Anabaptist movement did not stop. There are now some 2.3 million Anabaptists on 6 continents in more than 70 countries, including Canada. Thank you for listening.